So picture this. It's 1676, and colonial America is basically on fire. A massive rebellion is underway, a desperate fight for power. And in one of the strangest twists in history, this rebellion, this fight for freedom, would actually lay the legal groundwork for centuries of American slavery. Let's dig into how it all happened. It sounds completely backwards, right? How could a powerful alliance between black and white workers possibly be the thing that created racial slavery? But that's exactly what we're talking about. This rebellion scared the living daylights out of the ruling class, so much so that they systematically rewrote the laws of the land to drive a permanent wedge between races, just to make sure an alliance like that could never, ever threaten their power again. To really get what's going on, we have to rewind the clock. We're going to late 17th century Virginia. And you have to understand, this place was anything but peaceful. It was a total powder keg. You had the wealthy planter elite holding all the power, and then you had this growing class of poor, landless workers, both black and white, who were just about at their breaking point. See, back in these early days, the lines were really, really blurry. A person's legal status was often defined more by their economic class than by their race. The first Africans brought to Virginia often had a status that looked a lot like that of a European indentured servant. You work for a set number of years, and then you have a shot at freedom. But that ambiguity, that shared struggle, was a huge threat to the wealthy elite. There were so many things pushing this colony right to the edge. Tobacco was the engine of the economy, and prices had just tanked. Meanwhile, the governor's government was hitting people with heavy taxes. And for servants who had finished their terms, that promise of land, it was basically a lie. All the good, safe land was already owned by the rich, which pushed all the poor folks out onto the dangerous frontier and right into conflict with Native American tribes. What you end up with is this huge, frustrated class of people with absolutely nothing to lose. So into this absolute mess steps a guy named Nathaniel Bacon. Now, what's wild is that Bacon was a wealthy, educated man himself, but somehow he becomes this unlikely champion for all these angry, disgruntled people on the frontier. He taps into their rage, and what starts as a few small skirmishes explodes into a full-blown civil war. And things escalated so fast. It starts with a simple trading dispute, and it spirals into open warfare. The governor comes up with a plan for defense, but everyone sees it for what it is, a way to protect his own business interests. So Bacon just takes matters into his own hands. He's declared a rebel, but he becomes a hero to the people. He marches on the capital, Jamestown, not once, but twice. And the second time, he burns the entire city to the ground. It was complete and utter chaos. But this wasn't just mindless rioting, you know. They had a very clear target: Governor Berkeley and his corrupt buddies. In his Declaration of the People, Bacon laid it all out: the unjust taxes, the political favoritism, and the fact that the governor had a monopoly on the beaver trade, which a lot of people thought was the real reason he wasn't protecting the frontier. But look, as shocking as burning down the Capitol was, there was something else happening here, something that absolutely terrified every single wealthy planter in Virginia. It all came down to who exactly was in Bacon's army. At its peak, Bacon had an army of about 1,300 men. This wasn't some small mob. We're talking about a legitimate military force, big enough to take down the entire colonial government. And for the elite, the really scary part wasn't just the number of rebels. It was the makeup of that army. See, Bacon's army was this incredible mix of everybody who'd been left behind. You had landless white freemen, you had indentured servants from Europe, and you had both enslaved and free Africans, all of them fighting side by side. This was the absolute worst-case scenario for the ruling class. The poor, of all races, united by their shared economic misery. This alliance, they decided, had to be destroyed. So what happens? Well, Bacon just dies, suddenly, from dysentery, of all things. And just like that, the whole rebellion starts to fall apart. Governor Berkeley comes back and crushes what's left of the resistance. But just winning the fight wasn't enough for the elite. No way. They had to make sure this could never, ever happen again. And to do that, they turned to their most powerful weapon, the law. In the years right after the rebellion, Virginia's government got to work, passing a whole series of new laws. And each law was like another bar in a cage being built around people of African descent. In 1662, they made slavery hereditary through the mother. In 1667, they made it clear that being baptized as a Christian wouldn't set you free.
By 1669, a master could literally kill an enslaved person during correction and face no penalty. And then the final crushing blow came in 1705, with a law that officially defined enslaved people not as humans, but as real estate.
The strategy here was brutally simple. Drive a permanent wedge between poor whites and black Virginians. So as the laws were stripping away every last bit of humanity from black people, they were also giving poor white people these little perks, these small but important privileges. You'd get rewarded for catching runaway slaves. You were given the power to join slave patrols. They were building a legal wall between the two groups, and the foundation of that wall was race. And the fallout from all this, I mean, it was massive. To protect their own power, their own wealth, the planter elite didn't just put down a rebellion. They fundamentally re-engineered their entire society. They created a blueprint for racial slavery that would haunt America for centuries. It's the oldest trick in the book, right? Divide and conquer. That multiracial alliance in Bacon's rebellion was a huge concentration of power that threatens the elite. So by legally inventing a racial hierarchy, they could smash that powerful alliance into smaller, weaker pieces that they could easily control. So in the end, the very idea of race became a weapon. It was legally constructed to protect the class interest of the wealthy. They basically bought the loyalty of poor white people, not with real wealth or land, but with this psychological benefit of feeling racially superior. It gave them a stake in the new system, no matter how small, and it turned them into willing participants in policing it. And all of this really leaves us with one big, lingering question. The multiracial alliance of 1676 was crushed, and in its place, the powerful built a system designed specifically to divide people by race for economic control. So we have to ask, how do the echoes of that system, a system designed hundreds of years ago to protect the few, still shape the world we all live in today?